Hello, Julie here and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be sharing how I created these three cards as part of my work for the design team for Denise Boddey Designs. I'm going to start with this card, which is a Z fold card. I cut my 300 GSM white cardstock to 10.5 inches by 5.25 inches, and then I scored it at 5.25 inches and 2 5/8 inches. I folded it in halves along the 5.25 inch score, and then folded on the 2 5/8 score line back towards, so that the front of the card. I folded the right hand side back to the left hand side, making my Z. I'm going to quickly show you the design papers that I'll be using today. They're from the Jardin Romantique collection, and they're beautiful papers. They're a good solid paper. They're not flimsy. They are, well, I don't almost say they're a cardstock, and they've got beautiful patterns. I have also spent a bit of time in my spare time fussy cutting some of the elements from those papers to use as embellishments on my projects. I'm going to start by using the pattern paper called Song Blossom. I'm going to cut one 5-inch square and two pieces that are 2 3/8 by 5 inches. These are going to be the papers for the inside, the back inside, the back half front, and the front section. So all of the panels that you'll see as the card opens. I'm going to take my Prima distressing tool and distress all of the edges of these three pieces of cardstock. The distressing tool that I'm using is no longer available, but there are several different ones around that you can also use. Holtz has one which is like a round disc with blades in it. If you haven't got a distressing tool, you can use the blade of your scissors as well. So this sort of gives the shabby, well-used look that we want on the Shabby Chic card. I'm also going to use my Versafine black ink cube and ink all of the edges. Now that I've finished that, I will attach those three panels to the front sections of the card, well, the inside and front sections of the card. I'm going to make a panel to go on the front of the card now. I'm using my Spellbinders Decorative Labels 8. I'm using the second largest one from there, and I have die cut that from the Enchanted Florals paper, that beautiful reddy colour one, and then I run it through my Big Shot using my Couture Creations Flamingos and Hedgehogs embossing folder. Now I'm just going to wipe over the top of that embossing with my black ink cube that is almost dry, so it doesn't really stand out too much, but it has got a little bit of definition to it. Now I'm going to use my art glitter glue to attach that panel to the front of the card. I'm only applying glue to half of it because the other half, so half will be attached to the front of the card and the other half will be hanging over the edge of the card. I'm going to add some lace to the front of my card for some texture. This piece of lace I think is a Finnabair lace. I'm not exactly sure about that. Anyway, I'm going to trim it to size and I'm going to use my art glitter glue to attach it to the front of the card so that it runs down the side. So it's the same size as that panel I've just created, but I want the scallops to hang out the side of it. I'm also going to add a piece of chipboard. This was a bigger piece and I've trimmed it down because I only want half of it, and I don't know the name of it. It would be in Denise's shop somewhere, probably under Nautical, because it looks a bit like seagrass. My husband had a spray painting day one day and painted all of my chipboard white for me using a pressure pack, so that's lovely. Now I'm going to just use my art glitter glue to attach that on top of my lace. I'm going to choose a piece from my fussy cutting, and this particular image comes from the Nature's Romance sheet of paper. So I'm happy with that, I like the way it looks, and I'm going to attach that to my card. I also ended up adding a section from the fussy cut panel from Song Blossom, just to fill in a bit of extra space. I gave my chipboard a wash over with my Wink of Stella clear pen. I also used a normal paintbrush to give my flowers a coat of Glossy Accents, so just a thin coat, not a really heavy coat, and it just gives them a bit of shine. I seem to have lost that footage, so sorry about that. The sentiment for this card says Happy Mother's Day. I thought I might give this card to my mum for Mother's Day, so I just printed that out on my computer, and I have only printed it onto normal printer paper, so it's only thin. I'm inking around the edge of it, and I'm going to mat that onto some of that burgundy coloured paper. I think that comes from what? Can't remember. That comes from the Enchanted Florals paper. And then I'm going to attach that to the front of the card, and I'm going to use some old scraps of cardboard behind it. You can use foam tape if you prefer, but I tend to use pieces of old cardboard, box or chipboard scraps or something like that behind my things these days. So there we have card number 1 for today. Card number 2 for today is an easel card. The measurements for this card are the same as the last card, except we have an extra piece. So we're going to cut the card base 5 1/4 inches by 10 1/2, and we're also going to cut another piece that is 5 1/4 inches square. The 10 1/2 inch piece we're going to score in the same places as well, so we're going to score at 5 1/4 and 2 5/8. All of the measurements and description will be on my blog. I will put a link to my blog post in the description box below. So we fold in half on the 5 1/4 inch score mark, and then instead of folding the front back towards the outside like we did on the previous card, we fold it to the inside of the card. So now we're going to attach that 5 1/4 inch panel to the front of the card. The easiest way I find to do this is to add my glue or tape, whichever you prefer, to that front section, so the right hand section of the front. Cover that with your glue or tape, lay your card down flat, excuse me, and then put your 5 1/4 inch piece of cardstock directly on top so that it lines up exactly with the edge of your card. So now that we've got our card assembled, we'll start to decorate it. I'm going to cut 2 5 inch squares from Garden Letters, and I'm going to cut 1 4 3/4 inch square from Nature's Romance. I'm also going to cut another 2 pieces from Nature's Romance that are 2 3/8 by 5 inches. I'm also going to cut another piece from Nature's Romance that measures 3 inches by 4 3/4, and a piece from Enchanted Florals that is 3 1/2 by 4 3/4. As I said, all of these measurements will be on my blog, and the link will be in the description box below. Once again, I distressed and inked all of the edges of all of those pattern papers. I'm going to use this Martha Stewart punch to punch along the edge of the Nature's Romance 3 by 4 3/4 piece and the Enchanted Florals 3.5 by 4 3/4 inch piece. So I'm going to punch both of those. Time now to use double-sided tape and attach all of those layers to my card base. Next, I took a piece of this Hero Arts vellum. I trimmed it to 2 1/4 by 4 3/4, and then I used the Couture Creations Flamingos and Hedgehogs embossing folder to run that through my Big Shot. I've chosen a fussy cut image from Song Blossom. But before I attach that to my card, I'm going to use some of this braid. My mother gave it to me. She used to do egg artistry and she has lots of braids and laces and things like that. And this is one of the ones that she doesn't use anymore, so she gave it to me. So I'm going to use some of that behind my image just for some added texture. Once I've attached that with my art glitter glue, I'm going to add cardstock or cardboard to the back of this image that I have cut from Song Blossom, so it's the bird and the flowers and the leaves. I'm going to add the whole pieces of cardboard to the back of that so that it sits up on my card front. Then I'm going to use my art glitter glue to attach that to the front of my card. The sentiment comes from a uniquely creative kit and it says happy birthday. I'm going to trim that down, mat it onto some of that reddish coloured cardstock and then use a piece of scrap cardboard to mount that onto the inside of the card to use as the wedge to keep my easel card standing up. You can set that any distance that you like from the bottom of your card, so it depends on just what angle you want your card top section to sit at. So it's, yeah, as I said, completely up to you where you position that greeting. As a finishing touch, I'm just going to use my Nuvo drops in Morning Dew just to put a few drops here and there on my fussy cut embellishment. Here are a couple of close-ups. So on to card number 3 for today. So this card is a standard 5 1/4 inch square card. I'm going to use this stamp and die set by Craft Barn. It's called Primrose, and I'm going to stamp and heat emboss with Versafine black or Onyx black ink and clear embossing powder using my stamping platform to stamp 3 sets of this flower. So I think there's 5 layers to this stamp, so I'm going to stamp that 3 times, twice on the reddy coloured paper and once on this blue. So those papers are Enchanted Florals and Garden Letters. So I'm going to use my flower shaping tools now and a stubby holder that I've cut so that it opens flat, and I'm going to use the balls on the ends of those flower shaping tools to push into the back of the petals. I generally do that in a circular motion and then pull towards the centre in a straight line, and so I'm going to do that to each layer of my flowers, so each of the 5 layers. I have got a couple of flower making videos and I will put a link to those in the description box below if you'd like to have a look at that and see in a slower version of how I make these flowers. So once I've got the shaping done, I use my liquid glue to attach the layers on top of each other. I start with the biggest and work my way up to the smallest, and as I put one layer on top of the other, I offset the petals so that they're not lining up perfectly. I want them to be offset so that the flower looks fuller. Once I've got all of the layers stuck on, I then bring the flower onto my stubby holder, and I use my ball flower shaping tool to push down in the center and really work that down, which helps those petals lift up and adds more dimension to my flower. I went ahead and used the same technique to create all 3 flowers. Time now to start on my layers for the card. I'm going to use this Enchanted Florals, and I'm going to cut one piece of it 5 inches square and another that's 4 3/4 inches square. I'll use both sides of the paper in this instance. I'm not going to distress the edges this time. I'm just going to use my ink cube to ink around the edges of these 2 pattern papers. Then I'll use double-sided tape to attach them to the front of the card base. The texture for this card is coming from this tulle. It has gold specks in it and feels quite rough. It actually came wrapped around a bunch of flowers that I received. So I'm cutting a piece that's about 5 inches square, and I'm going to layer that on top of that light coloured pattern paper. I don't really have the design for this card sorted out in my head yet. I'm just sort of working it out as I go. I'm going to add some chipboard to this card, and it's just bits and pieces. The fatter leaf is from the Botanicals chipboard pack, and the other is from the Delicate Branch chipboard pack. I have these pearlescent watercolours that I purchased from Spotlight some time ago, and you can see I've hardly used them, so I thought I'd get them out and try getting some use out of them. I'm using 2 of the greeny turquoisey colours from there, and I'm blending them onto my chipboard. I used my Lifestyles Nesting Doily Circles die and some pearlised cardstock to create a pearl gold doily. I'm going to use that to go behind my embellishment cluster. I'm once again going to use some of my fussy cut pieces that I have cut from that beautiful pattern paper. The piece I'm going to use here is actually cut from the paper called Song Blossom, and it was the piece that the offcut from the easel card, the piece that had the bird in it. So I'm going to play around with my layering and my placement of my flowers and fussy cutting pieces and my chipboard, and when I'm happy with how it looks, I'm going to use my art glitter glue to attach all of those pieces to my card front. Now is probably a good time to remind you that if you could give me a thumbs up or a like or subscribe to my channel, it all helps me grow my channel with YouTube, and I would really appreciate it if you could do that for me. I added a little bit of bling, so by using Nuvo glitter drops in Midnight Sky, and I just added a little bit to the centre of each one of those flowers. You'll notice that I only ended up using the 2 pinkish coloured flowers. The lighter blue one was just too much, I thought. The final step is to add my sentiment. I got this sentiment from my little jar that sits over on my desk of sentiments that I've created that I haven't used. This one is black heat embossed, and it says belated birthday wishes, but I didn't want the belated on there, so I just cut that section off and tucked it under the flower so that you couldn't notice that anything had been cut off of there. So that's my 3 cards for today, all shabby chic, and I hope you've enjoyed watching my video. I know that I've really enjoyed creating these cards. I look forward to reading your comments, and I hope you can join me when I post my next video. Thank you.